Welcome to Faith Matters. This is our program where we bring in 3 local religious leaders to discuss topics of interest that are important to our community. I want to welcome Reverend Richard Hasselback from the Clarkstown Reformed Church, Mohammed Ziaullah from the Islamic Center of Rockland County, and I want to thank Rabbi Paul Kurland for welcoming us here in Congregation Shir Shalom and hosting us in your beautiful sanctuary. Thank you.
Thank you.
So gentlemen, thanks for being here. Let's get right into the topic at hand. So there's really been a change in religious practice in the last 5 or 6 years. In fact, the research shows that there's a real stability in religious identity. You know, some of the research from Pew and from Barna, from Gallup, particularly in 25 and beginning of 26 now, 70% of Americans identify with religion. It's down from 75% in 2015. But it's been stable since 2020. So 70% of our country identify as religious. The Christian share of that is about 62% of adults identify as Christian. That's 40% Protestant, 19% Catholic. Again, that's been down over the last number of decades, but it's stabilized. Religious nuns, and these are people that when they're approached in surveys, when they're asked what their background is, what they practice, it's none of the above. They go through the whole laundry list of congregations, and it's none of the above. And that's a new category, so the none of the above is really kind of risen, but it's stabilized at about 28 to 29% across the entire population. It's a rather large number. The trends in participation and attendance really seem to have also gone up a bit and then stabilized. There's been a precipitous decline throughout the last 50 years, 30 in particular, but over the last couple of years it's kind of stabilized, if not kind of incrementally gone up. Only about 20% of Americans say that they attend services weekly, but when you expand that into regular services, when you expand that into a couple times of a month, it goes up to about 41%. The young adult surge that we're also seeing, this is kind of across trends. Across denominations rather. There's a millennial return from what the data is suggesting. Church attendance among millennials within Christianity and Islam have risen, particularly about 39%. It's up from 21% in 2019. So there's a real return of millennials. And what we're seeing from that is, that's something that seems to really be driven by potentially life change events. We're also seeing a growth within Christianity within the non-denominational branch. And then finally, there's this quiet revival that they're talking about from the data that we're seeing. Gen Z in particular. We're seeing a real shift. Traditionally, women, particularly within all the different generations, but Gen Z in particular, were more religious and more plugged into religion according to surveys. And now we're seeing a total shift in that area. There's been a spike with Gen Z men over the last couple of years, and about 15% increase amongst Gen Z men. So it's almost equal in terms of Gen Z men and women with affiliation with religious belief and participation across all traditions. And frankly, we've seen a very steep rise in the none of the aboves, driven by Gen Z women within that group. So my first question is, what are you seeing with your congregations and across the country? Are you seeing these same changes demographically? Rabbi, how about we start with you?
So I do know the numbers, and I do know in the synagogue world that certain Jewish outlets are having different experiences. In the Orthodox Jewish world, there seems to be a strong, vibrant growth. And in the non-Orthodox, which I use the term sometimes the non-fundamentalist, I've seen that people have found alternatives in their lives. So that in terms of joining a synagogue, I think the numbers have been down. That would be in the conservative and even in the reform movement. And I have this silly comment that sometimes people find that you don't need a synagogue because you got Rabbi Google that you can be in touch with. And quite honestly, you can go online and you could watch a service from home from some of these synagogues that you don't have to be part of a local community. And maybe that nurtures you. I don't know how those people respond to surveys, but we've certainly seen that. In Rockland County, I can't speak about the entire country, but in Rockland County, the demographics have changed, and there are certain people that are less inspired to move to Rockland County. The people that would usually join my synagogue, I'm finding less and less of them are choosing to move here. I don't want to go into the reasons. I think I know some of the reasons, but I want to be a little bit more polite about discussing that. And I would say that how it's affected me and all the other Reform and conservative synagogues in Rockland County is our religious schools are minuscule in size as compared to 15, 20 years ago. Where we were close to 200 kids in our school, now we have a little under 30 kids in our school. And there aren't any other schools that are so much bigger than that. Where 150 kids would have been a smaller type of school, we don't have anyone close to 1/3 of that size anymore. So I've seen those demographic changes.
So Mohammed, what are you seeing over at the mosque?
You know, at the mosque, there is a growth, but I don't know that growth is because of people moving from the city, you know, and coming to Rockland County, maybe less expensive than the city. That's why we have seen quite few new families, but also we have seen that some families move out and somewhere else they go. But you know, that's why we are thinking that how we can make mosque more attractive to the younger generation. So that's one of the reasons that's we are thinking to build a facility where we can give them opportunity to come and play basketball, table tennis, and you know inside games. So at least they will not only praying, you know, but they have some fun too. So this way, this may be a magnet to them to come. And then, yeah, of course, they will pray in the mosque, you know. So unfortunately, all three religion, we don't have this type of, you know, in church or in synagogue, you know. We don't have this recreational facility where the younger kids can play and, you know, make friends and then pray. So, you know, because we have 5 times, we pray 5 times a day. I go 5 times.
And that's not fun?
I want to tell you that in the mid-20th century, there was a rabbi that said that when Jews gather to play basketball, that's a Jewish experience, right? And therefore, they created what were called the shuls with the pools. And there were some synagogues that had pools actually inside, and also gyms. And because they figure when you bring people in and they start to interact with one another, I totally agree with you. Sometimes that leads to having other experiences that root within them as well. So
yeah.
That's very smart.
Reverend, before we get to you, and on the Christian perspective, just going a little further in what you guys have brought up, as it relates to, it's more of a cultural shift and a change in people, the way in which people, you know, I go back to the groundbreaking book and study from like 30 years ago, Bowling Alone, right? And the sociologist talked about how, you know, people self-select and how bowling was like the most popular activity. And it's still very, very popular, but it's nowhere near as popular. And with the rise of social media, people just were seeing it across whole industries, the movie industry, right? I mean, it used to be you would go to a movie theater, you have streaming, people affiliate and associate in a different way. Do you think that's what's really happening with religion as well? People maybe, well, some are returning, some are just not finding the value because they socialize in a different way or they assimilate in a different way.
Yes. You know, this phone, you know, really we have to try to come up with the ways where we can give them some other opportunities to the kids, to get away from the phone. Because, they are sitting and talking, instead of talking to each other, they are talking to the phone. So that's why, it is a good idea that beside this phone and telling them only pray, 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 we can give some alternatives, so that they can come to on the table for that.
There's nothing wrong with praying.
Oh, thank you for saying that.
And we're not in business to help people improve their sporting lives. As valuable as that may be, people come to churches, to synagogues, and to mosques because they're looking for meaning, and they're looking for community, and they're looking for something beyond themselves, and they are looking to overcome the isolation of the contemporary world. These things, I share Mohammed's antipathy for them. They isolate people because young people have hundreds of friends on the phone, but they have no real friends. They live in a virtual world. They don't live in they don't live in an analog world, for lack of a better term. What churches, synagogues, mosques offer is they offer an analog experience of meaning and community. And what's the meaning? It's ultimate meaning. Because culture also offers meaning. Buy, succeed, have a lot of money, have a great career. Sure, none of that makes you happy. None of that gives you a sense of meaning that becomes the foundation for one's life. Only in God, to borrow a phrase from the Psalms, are our souls at rest.
So I want to respond to you. I agree that I see churches, I see mosques, I see synagogues as wonderful places to find meaning, to really help create a path for you that's a beautiful path to follow.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure if everyone that comes to synagogue is looking for meaning. It might be some of the other things you mentioned. Sometimes they like the sense of community, which I think is very important.
Right.
And sometimes they come because they love the music, and it just might be that they're musically inclined and that lifts their spirit. Maybe that's the meaningful thing. In the Hasidic world, they have prayers without words.
Yeah.
That are just musical la-la-las, so to speak.
Yeah.
And it lifts the spirit. So I wish more people would get meaning out of it, and I think they do. If you show up, there's a better chance that you're going to find even more, I would say, guidance to help you find a more beautiful path in life.
Well, and I think one of the reasons people come to synagogues, churches, mosques, is because in the world at large, they're not finding meaning. They're not finding value that can sustain a life. So they come looking for what we offer, and we offer God.
So I would love to hear from you as well, but I find that I love religion. And when we used to have an interfaith clergy group in Clarkstown, it was wonderful because I felt I had more in common with the other clergy because of the fire in my belly and the fire in all of your bellies, if you understand what I mean. But I sometimes find, I don't know if I want to call them atheists, but I sometimes find, I'll say atheists or agnostics, that have a kind of fire in their belly for goodness in this world. And therefore, I don't want to poo-poo them, but I think that religion is there as that string around your finger that reminds you, hey, don't forget, don't let it be out of sight, out of mind, because you could wake up and you could do all those, quote, selfish things, right? But you want to fill your day with selfless things as well. And I think that that's what religion offers.
Well, that's the invitation of religion, is to find selflessness.
Right.
And the meaning in selflessness. But also, we can't write off agnostics, atheists. Had we written off agnostics in the beginning of the 20th century, we would have written off C.S. Lewis. Because he started after his loss of his mother, and after the First World War and all the death and terrible things he experienced, he described himself as an angry atheist. Yet that angry atheist found meaning in faith. And he spent most of his life inviting other people to find meaning in faith as well. And I think that's what we can invite people to.
No, absolutely. But and I think, Rabbi, you bring out a very interesting point, because that's the whole phenomenon with the nuns. People that maybe they have some faith belief, but they're not really affiliated with any particular religion. Maybe it wasn't part of their growing up. But causes can then become like the driving factor. Secular humanists, where it's either the environment or
the
various
homeless,
the homeless, or political causes that literally have kind of filled that void amongst the nuns. We're looking at a shift, though, and a change, and across not just the country, but here in the county, and frankly in Rockland County, and in the town of Clarkstown. Just 6 years ago, the town of Clarkstown bought the Grace Baptist Church. I have a very thick history book written in 1884, about this thick, by David Cole. He was an Episcopal bishop who lived here in Rockland County. And it's the early history of Rockland County. And there's a page and a half in there on the Grace Baptist Church in Nanuet. It's no more. The town ended up buying the property, and we've owned it, and the church no longer exists. Temple Beth Shalom, properties being sold. We've seen mergers of synagogues. We've seen closing of Catholic schools, consolidation and mergers across the board, and we're seeing it here. So some of the more mainline traditional congregations, but we're also seeing explosive growth in the Orthodox and the Hasidic community, people that are affiliating and moving here to Rockland County. We're seeing growth in the more fundamental Christian congregations, and we're seeing growth within the mosques. So my question is religious leaders, you're seeing that, I'm assuming, and how are you welcoming those people? There's got to be like a divergence within your congregations. As the rabbi said, you have people that, they're coming for different reasons. Maybe they're not coming as frequently. How are you incorporating the new people in, and while sustaining the existing people that have been coming, that maybe they have a different focus or a different way in which they've practiced their faith? Rabbi?
Your comments remind me of a passage in St. John's Gospel, the first chapter, where John the Baptist sees Jesus passing. He says, "Look at the Lamb of God." Two of his disciples decide to trail Jesus, and trailing him, he turns around and says, "What are you looking for?" And they say, "Where do you live?" By which they, I think, mean, "What makes you tick?" And he says, "Come and see." And I think that's the answer. When people are attracted to our religious communities, they need to come and see genuine faith. They need to come and see a community of people that's animated by the religious wisdom of the tradition. And that's where often churches and synagogues and mosques that go off galumphing into social concerns make a mistake, because those things can become idolatrous. God asks us to root our faith in the God of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Jesus, and to root our lives in the wisdom of that tradition. Unless they see us doing that, unless they see compassion, unless they see concern for the poor and the marginalized, they will not stay with us, and they won't be at all impressed. But if we show them that we care more about compassion and love for the marginalized than we do about our collections, then we'll be much better off.
So I partially agree with you, and you and I could probably have a conversation another time about little nuanced differences. I started off as an educational director. I got my master's in Jewish education. I only went to rabbinical school with the idea that I would strengthen myself as an educator.
Yeah.
Who would be foolish enough to ever want to work in a pulpit, right? And we won't go into those details, but my goal as an educator was to create experiential Judaism.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not going to teach a kid how to play baseball by sitting in a classroom and opening a book, or even to watch a video. That's not going to work. You got to be out there in the field. You got to put on the glove. You got to swing the, and I would always bring people, the kids, to different places where their parents also had to drive, and they got to see it too. And they say, wait a minute, there's people like me that are doing these things. I guess it's okay. And they start doing it, and when you start doing it, you start feeling the beauty of it. We light Sabbath candles on Friday night. If I want to tell people what to do, you take the match, you put the candle, you light it, you say this blessing, right? But just learning about that's what you do doesn't click. When you light those Sabbath candles, there's something that happens in the home that feels so different. There's something beautiful about those two candles there. And it's an emotional connection you make that you can't learn from just a classroom experience. So exposing people more and more to those experiences, they say, oh, I never thought about it. It's always been, as I said before, out of sight, out of mind. And when it's no longer out of sight, out of mind, they start thinking about it and they start realizing how it nurtures their soul.
Right.
So Mohammed, I know
Yeah.
from a spiritual perspective, literally, I know that
Yeah, see, I have noticed, a couple of new young people moved in the area, and they came in and asked us, what type of educational program we have for the kids, so we explain it to them, so they start coming. Yeah, that's why I was saying that the Islam is a complete religion, not only for you pray 5 times, that's not enough, but you got to how you interact with your neighbors, how you interact with your friends, how your kids interact to each other, not only Muslim kids, but non-Muslim kids, so this is a complete way of life. So what we do when the new family comes in, we give them the curriculum for the school, but on the other hand, we say, look, that's not enough. The Sunday school is not enough. We have a 5 times prayers. You can come on those prayers. We have a halqa where we, Saturday morning we sit down and talk about, the Holy Book Quran and explain it to them. So this may get into their head. Yeah, that's okay. Maybe I will come and sit and talk, listen to our imam, because I am not a scholar, but I'm a student of Islam, But so that's why we discuss with them, and they appreciate that. And I have noticed really a couple of new families came in, young families, and the hard time we are having is keeping the old, like when they are getting to 18, 19, that age, that's, who went through the school, so bring them back.
right.
That's
Yeah, and the data is actually showing that maybe they're leaving at 18, but they're starting to come back at 24, 25,
Right.
into their later 20s.
People explore the world out there because the world is more available to them on the internet as well. And somewhere along the way, I think that some people realize there's a missing piece in their life, and it's that spirituality. They might find spirituality through meditation and yoga and things like that, but very often, if it's Islam, if it's Christianity, if it's Judaism or other religions, they realize that there are very warm, meaningful values that they love to be part of. But they've missed it when they're only looking out for, I would say, the egocentric world. There's nothing wrong with being selfish, because you have to feed yourself, and that's a selfish act. But if you're only selfish, and sometimes when you're younger, it's all about what you need for yourself. That's why I'm always impressed on college campuses where there are different religious groups, that they make sure that they volunteer their time to do other things as well. That it's not only about them, it's about It's about community. It's about humanity, I'll put it that way.
Yeah. I think what a religious tradition, any religious tradition, offers that is of most value is what Muhammad referred to as a complete religion, as a life practice. So it's not enough to just take up space in the church or a synagogue or a mosque for that matter.
See, like the faith matters, because you believe in that, and how you can be a religious person or a good Muslim or good Christian or good Jew when you are lying,
Yeah.
when you are cheating some people or you are backbiting somebody. These are fundamental things which all three religion stopped to that. So that's the thing, main thing is that you got to follow to the spirit. What's the spirit of religion is.
It is making of your home, of your life, a temple for God.
That's a Jewish quote. It says that the table that you eat at is a mikdash ma'at, which is a little temple.
Yeah.
Because the respect you have even when you're eating the food, offering the blessings before, and in Judaism, offering the blessings afterwards, show that sense of gratitude. Rather than what's in it for me, it's the fact that I'm grateful. I'm grateful not only for God, but I'm grateful for all the people that either grew that food or
Transported it.
it or sold it or bought it and brought it home or prepared it. There's a lot of people, we say a blessing over bread. And it says in the English, thanking God for bringing forth bread from the earth. That's not true. I've never seen bread grow out of the earth. The only reason bread exists is because God and all of God's partners have worked together to make that bread and to bring it to you. And so we're not only thanking God, we're thanking others around me that are the partners.
That's a perfect segue. We're almost out of time, but I wanted to get to one last question and one last topic, and we only have a couple of minutes, so I'm going to see if we can try and bring this together quickly. So the studies show and the data shows that there's kind of a disconnect where culture really can drive issues, and it can come in conflict with traditional religious teachings. As the saying goes, culture often dictates the moral issues of the day. So things like climate change and economic inequality, gender roles, and sometimes traditional teachings of various religions bump right up against that and are in conflict. How do you model an example for your congregants where there's a disagreement with modern culture on values and norms with what your religion teaches? Rabbi?
Oh, thanks a lot. That is a real challenge because there are rabbis that are very much dedicated to certain cultural concerns. And of course, you bring two rabbis into a room, there's three opinions very often. And so I know a number of my colleagues that support certain things that others reject. And it's very tough, and they try to use Judaism to defend their approach. That's always been a challenge. Even in the Talmud, you have rabbis sitting around, and the Talmud included the discussions and the disagreements, but it had to come l'shem shamayim, for the sake of heaven. And what you really hope is that the foundation, the people are thinking for the sake of heaven. They're not allowing, forgive me for using this term, they're not allowing in their religion to allow the tail to wag the dog. You want it to be really for a greater cause and not for your personal. But it really is a challenge, and you called me first, but I don't have any perfect answer. I only know that it exists out there.
Yeah, this is perfectly you said that, there is no answer, there's no right answer, But yes, we try in our congregation, if there is any disagreement, go to the book, and see the the interpretation of that, what God wants from you. The thing is that all these three religions, you have to have a fear or love of God. Otherwise, without that, it is impossible to do the right thing. For example, in the worldly way, like we have the police has a speed limit. Okay, if you go over speed, you got the ticket. So you got the punishment right here. But when you do, something, you don't get the punishment right away. You have to wait for the day of judgment. When the God says, I will take care of that. If you did some mischief to other people, it will be punished. But when in the day of, so people think, oh, we will wait for that, so that's the big issue. Unless
like you have a lead foot.
unless you have a complete belief and respect for the book.
Right.
Just fast, because I know we're time bound. But what faith does is it grounds everything in the belief in God. God is the foundation for the moral principles that we live out of. So culture does not define morality. God defines morality. And we find, as Muhammad says,
This
I'm
book.
going to reach for a different book.
But it came from the same God.
We find our morality there. And then the challenge of faith is to challenge culture when culture is going astray. Not to give them more of the same, not to go along to get along, none of that stuff. If culture dictated morality, we would be out of business, and we should be. But we need to challenge culture so that when culture says, for example, unborn life, just a fetus, inconvenient, get rid of it. We have to stand up and say, no, that is the taking of a life that God has willed into creation, his creation, and it is wrong.
So I need to respond that, like I said about the Talmud, having all these debates and discussions, trying to figure out what the will of God is. We have the books, which, by the way, I want everyone to know, I don't have a book here because I'm the one that gave them. I gave you guys this gift, right? I just gave that before we started. They were in my office. I thought they could use it. But there are times where it's really tough to try to figure out, is this God's will or not? And I would guess in the church, in the mosque, and in the synagogues, there are differences of opinions among the great scholars of those religions. And this is another topic, but the issue of homosexuality, the issue of abortion, and when abortion can or cannot or should not be done, these are things that even the religious leaders have debated over the centuries.
Yes.
And they're not so black and white all the time. Each of us we believe, each of us, what we have come to believe in our own religions, but it might be different than other ministers, other imams,
Which is why there should be dialogue. Respectful, honest, open dialogue. Not a shouting match. That so much of cultural confrontations have become.
How dare you say that?
Well, what can I expect of you?
So why don't we, this has been a wonderful discussion. I absolutely am looking forward to future discussions where we actually could probably get into some of what we've explored here. But I think this is a great time for us to wrap it up. So in closing, and again, I just asked for a one or two sentence answer. If I were to ask, the state of our religion today, from your perspective, is?
I think it's becoming more healthy because I think more and more churches, synagogues, mosques are returning to a faithful living of their tradition. And it's only out of that we can grow.
Yes, that if people go back to the faith is the most important thing for any religion. If you go there, you cannot go wrong.
Religion will always exist, even if it's on a roller coaster ride of up and down at different times, because it's really critical to the holistic human being. And only when people find the holistic side of themselves will they really connect to religion.
Well, thank you so much. This has been a wonderful discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you
much.
so much.
So I want to thank our religious leaders for being here. I want to thank you for watching. Please stay tuned for future episodes of Faith Bend.